Is that... is that really the Ascendant? Whispered Lieutenant Kieran beside her. Vela nodded slowly, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching vessel. Yes, but not as we knew her. 10 years ago, the Ascendant had fled the solar system with its surviving crew, barely escaping the first attack of the entity known only as the Devourer. The cosmic horror had appeared at the edge of human space without warning, a living darkness that consumed planets, ships, and even light itself. When the Ascendant had retreated, humanity had believed Captain Orion Rains a coward. Now, the prodigal ship returned. Incoming transmission, announced the station's AI. Origin, USS Ascendant. The view screen flickered to life, and Vela felt her chest tighten. Captain Rains looked older, his once youthful face now weathered by experience. A lattice of silver implants traced patterns along his temples and his eyes. Those were no longer entirely human eyes. Helios Station. This is Captain Rains of the Ascendant. Requesting permission to dock. Admiral Lyra Ellison stepped forward. Captain Rains, you abandoned your post. You fled when Earth needed you most. We didn't flee, Admiral, Rains replied, his voice eerily calm. We went hunting. Hunting? Lyra's voice dripped with skepticism. For answers, for technology, for allies. Rains leaned forward. For a way to kill the Devourer. The command center fell silent. In the decades since the Ascendant's departure, the Devourer had consumed 3 colony worlds. The combined fleet of Earth had barely managed to slow its advance. You've been gone for 10 years, Rains, Admiral Ellison said finally. Our scientists have worked tirelessly. We've built defenses. Not enough, Rains interrupted. Your defenses won't hold. The Devourer is evolving. But so have we. The camera panned across the Ascendant's bridge. Vela gasped. The crew members were changed, subtle modifications visible on each of them. Not just the implants, but something more fundamental. What happened to you out there? Admiral Ellison asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. We found the predecessor worlds, Rains said. We found the civilizations that fought the Devourer before us. Some fallen, some hiding, some evolved beyond recognition. And we learned. Rains' altered eyes flashed. We integrated. We adapted. We became what we needed to become. Behind him stood Navigator Mira Novak, her skin now faintly luminescent. Engineer Casimir Volkov, with hands that occasionally phased through solid matter. And Communications Officer Indra Kamal, whose pupils had split into fractal patterns. Permission. To dock, Admiral, Rains repeated. The Devourer is 3 months from reaching Earth. We don't have time for bureaucracy. Admiral Ellison exchanged glances with Vela. Fear and hope warred in her expression. Permission granted, she said finally. But your crew stays on board until our medical teams clear you. Rains smiled thinly. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral. We aren't exactly compatible with your medical equipment anymore. As the Ascendant moved into docking position, Vela studied its hull more closely. The metal seemed to ripple occasionally as though alive. Strange geometries decorated the ship's flanks, patterns that hurt her eyes if she looked too long. What have they become? Kieran whispered. Vela shook her head slowly. I don't know. But the question is, are they still human enough to save humanity? The Ascendant docked with a hiss of unknown gases. The airlock cycled, and Captain Rains stepped onto Helios Station, bringing with him the first real hope Earth had known in a decade, and mysteries beyond imagination. The briefing room fell silent as Captain Rains finished his presentation. Holographic images of the Devourer hung in the air, a mass of darkness that seemed to bend space itself, surrounded by a storm of disintegrating matter. So it's not just consuming worlds, Admiral Ellison said, breaking the silence. It's consuming reality itself. Precisely, Rains nodded. It exists partially outside normal space-time. That's why conventional weapons have been ineffective. Vela studied the data scrolling across her tablet. These readings? They're impossible. According to this, the Devourer is expanding exponentially with each world it consumes. And accelerating, added Mira Novak, the Ascendant's navigator. Her luminescent skin cast a soft glow across the table. Its current trajectory will bring it to Earth in exactly 87 days. Admiral Elyson pinched the bridge of her nose. You still haven't explained what happened to your crew, Captain. Rains exchanged glances with his officers. We encountered the Loxari and the Antares cluster, he began, an ancient species that survived an encounter with the Devourer millennia ago by evolving. Evolving how? Pressed Director Basara of Earth Defense. They transcended the limitations of biological existence, Engineer Casimir said, his hand briefly phasing through the table before solidifying again. They exist on multiple planes simultaneously. And they... What? Changed you? Vela asked. They offered us a choice, Rains replied. The Loxari had been watching humanity for centuries. They believed we had potential. When we found them, they offered us transformation, a merger of our consciousness with their technology. Indra Kamal's fractal eyes shifted patterns as she spoke. We're still human, Commander Tarek, just enhanced. We can perceive the Devourer as it truly exists now. Vela felt a chill run down her spine. And the ship? The Ascendant looks alive. It is, Rains confirmed. Partially. We integrated Loxari biomechanics with our original systems. The hull can self-repair. The quantum drives can pierce dimensional barriers. And our weapons... He touched a control, and a new hologram appeared. The B.O. Ascendant unleashing streams of iridescent energy that seemed to fold space around them. Reality disruption cannons, Casimir explained. They target the Devourer's true form, beyond the physical plane. Director Basara leaned forward. You expect us to believe that your one ship can defeat what our entire fleet couldn't even damage? No, Rains said firmly. The Ascendant alone cannot defeat the Devourer, but it can wound it. And with your fleet providing support, we have a fighting chance. What kind of support? Admiral Ellison asked cautiously. Mira's luminescent fingers danced. Over a console, bringing up schematics. We need to upgrade your primary fleet vessels with modified weapon systems. Nothing as extensive as our transformation, but enough to make your ships effective. How extensive are these modifications? Vela asked. Significant, Casimir admitted, but possible within our time frame. Silence fell across the room again. Vela could see the struggle on each face, hope warring with fear of the unknown. There's something you're not telling us, she said finally, looking directly at Rains. What's the cost? Rains's altered eyes met hers unflinchingly. Perception changes everything, Commander. Once you see the universe as we now see it, you can never go back. The crew who operate these upgraded systems will be changed, not as dramatically as we were, but changed nonetheless. And the alternative? Admiral Ellison asked quietly. Extinction, Indra said simply. The Devourer won't stop with Earth. It will consume our entire galaxy eventually. Vela looked at the image of the cosmic horror, feeling its wrongness even through the holographic display. Then she looked at Rains and his crew, still recognizably human, despite their alterations. I volunteer, she said suddenly, rising to her feet. If we need people to pilot these upgraded ships, I volunteer. Rains studied her thoughtfully. It's not a decision to make lightly, Commander. The Devourer took my home colony, Vela replied, her voice steady. Took my family. I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Admiral Ellison looked around the room, then nodded slowly. Begin the upgrades, and call for volunteers from our best pilots and crew. If Captain Rains is right, we have less than 3 months to prepare for the fight of our lives. As the meeting adjourned, Vela approached Rains. How bad will it be? She asked quietly. The transformation. Rains's expression softened slightly. Painful, disorienting, but also illuminating. You'll see things you never imagined possible. Will I still be me? He placed a half-corporeal hand on her shoulder. That's the real battle, Commander Tarek, and it's one only you can fight. Pain radiated through Vela's body as the neural interface integrated with her nervous system. Through half-closed eyes, she watched the liquid metal of the Loxari technology seep into her skin, creating intricate patterns along her forearms. Breathe. Through it, Mira coached, her luminescent face hovering nearby. Your consciousness is expanding to accommodate new sensory inputs. It burns, Vela gasped. Your brain is forming connections it was never designed to form, Casimir explained, monitoring readings on a display that seemed to float in midair. But humans have remarkable neuroplasticity. Across the Ascendant's modified hangar bay, 24 other volunteers underwent similar procedures. Some screamed, others lay in silent agony. All had volunteered after Vela stepped forward. The best pilots and engineers Earth had to offer. Phase 1 complete, Indra announced. Neural pathways established. Rains moved between the transformation pods, his expression grim but determined. Begin Phase 2. A new sensation washed over Vela. Not pain this time, but something more. Profound. The boundaries of her perception began to stretch, as though veils she hadn't known existed were being pulled away. What am I seeing? She whispered, as colors she had no names for bloomed around her. The edges of reality, Mira explained. You're perceiving dimensional boundaries. Vela gasped as her awareness expanded further. She could suddenly see the quantum field surrounding the ship, the ripples of gravity wells, the whisper-thin membranes separating different planes of existence, and beyond those membranes, movement, intelligence, watching. They're curious about you, Rains said, noticing her widened eyes. The Loxari exist primarily in that adjacent dimension now. They're monitoring your progress. Hours blended into days as the transformation continued. Vela's body adapted, changed, integrated with the alien technology. Her senses expanded beyond human limits until she could perceive the very fabric of space-time. On the 7th day, she stood on her own again, examining her transformed body. The changes were subtle but unmistakable. The faint luminescence beneath, her skin, the slight transparency of her fingertips when she moved them quickly, the enhanced clarity of her vision that now perceived spectra far beyond the human range. How do you feel? Rains asked. Like I've been blind my entire life, Vela answered honestly, and just opened my eyes for the first time. Throughout the solar system, Earth's defense fleet underwent its own transformation. Not as profound as the changes to their crews, but significant nonetheless. Ships received Loxari human hybrid systems, weapons capable of disrupting dimensional barriers, shields that existed partially out of phase with normal space. Admiral Ellison, who had chosen to remain fully human, watched the process with mixed emotions. Will they still follow orders? She asked Rains as they observed a training exercise. Or are they more loyal to your benefactors now? They're still human at their core, Rains assured her. The Loxari don't want servants, Admiral. They want partners. Partners against the Devourer. Partners in survival, Rains corrected. The Devourer has consumed countless civilizations. The Loxari believe humanity has the adaptability they lack, the creative spark needed to finally end the threat. Vela had begun training with her modified fighter squadron, learning to harness her new perceptions in combat. The simulations showed her horrifying glimpses of the Devourer's true nature, a multi-dimensional monstrosity that fed on reality itself. "It's aware of us," she reported after one particularly intense session. "I can feel it, probing, searching." Rains nodded grimly. "It senses the Loxari technology. It's encountered it before." "Is it afraid?" Vela asked. "No," Indra said, her fractal eyes shifting. "But it's concerned. That's why it's accelerating toward Earth. It wants to eliminate the threat before we're fully prepared." New data appeared on the strategic displays. The Devourer had increased its velocity. Its estimated arrival had shortened to 59 days. "We're running out of time," Admiral Ellison said. "How many ships will be ready?" 17 capital ships, 34 destroyers, and approximately 200 fighter craft, Casimir reported. "It will have to be enough." That night, Vela stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the distant stars with her enhanced vision. She could now see the subtle distortions around certain stars, signs of the Devourer's previous feedings across the galaxy. "Magnificent, isn't it?" came a voice. Vela turned to find a figure she didn't recognize, a woman with features that seemed to shift subtly as though seen underwater. "You're Loxari," Vela realized, her enhanced senses detecting the dimensional displacement around the being. "I am Nixara," the entity confirmed, "one of the observers." "Why choose us?" Vela asked. "Out of all the species in the galaxy?" Nixara's form rippled. "Because you fear, yet advance anyway. You doubt, yet believe. You die, yet sacrifice. Contradictions make you adaptable in ways we never were." "Will it be enough?" Vela whispered. "That," said Nixara, already fading from view, "depends entirely on you." Space distorted as the combined Earth-Loxari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates Mira had calculated. Before them hung the massive gas giant Antares Prime, its swirling storms dwarfed by the approaching horror. The Devourer. Even with her enhanced perception, Vela struggled to comprehend its true form. A darkness deeper than the void, with tendrils, stretching across dimensional planes. Where it passed, reality itself thinned and tore. "All ships. Battle Formation Omega," Admiral Ellison's voice came through the comms. "Remember your training." Vela guided her fighter into position. Around her, the other transformed pilots did the same, their ships, now partly biomechanical, responding to thought as much as physical control. "First wave, prepare to engage," Captain Rains ordered from the Ascendant. "Target the dimensional folds when they appear." The fleet advanced in perfect formation toward the cosmic monstrosity. For a moment, the Devourer seemed to pause, as if surprised by their approach. Then it struck. Reality buckled as the entity lashed out with trans-dimensional appendages. 3 Earth destroyers vanished instantly, their atoms scattered across multiple planes of existence. "Evasive patterns," shouted Commander Brix, leading Vela's squadron. "Focus fire on Sector 7. Vela banked her fighter sharply, feeling the ship respond as though it were an extension of her own body. She fired the reality disruption cannons, watching the iridescent energy beams pierce the veil between dimensions to strike at the Devourer's true form. The entity recoiled, a silent scream radiating across dimensional planes. "It's working!" she called out. "Concentrate fire!" Across the battlefield, the enhanced fleet coordinated their attack. The Ascendant led the charge, its advanced weapons tearing gaps in the Devourer's extra-dimensional armor. For a brief moment, hope surged through the human forces. Then the Devourer adapted. Its form shifted, pulling inward before exploding outward. In new configurations, tentacles of void energy lashed across space, engulfing ships and dissolving them from existence. "It's changing its dimensional frequency," Casimir warned over the comms. "Recalibrate weapons." Vela's fighter shuddered as the interface adjusted. Through her enhanced senses, she could feel the Devourer's rage, ancient and cold and hungry. "Squadron 3, with me!" she called, diving toward a newly exposed weakness. Her fighters followed, unleashing concentrated fire. The battle raged across multiple planes of existence. To unmodified human observers, it would have appeared as incomprehensible flashes of impossible colors and distortions of space. But to Vela and the other enhanced humans, it was a desperate struggle against an intelligence older than stars. "We're losing too many ships," Admiral Elizan reported grimly. "The Ascendant's weapons are effective, but the rest of our fleet can barely make a dent." Vela watched in horror as another destroyer imploded, its crew's dying screams cutting off abruptly across all communication channels. "There has to be another way," she muttered, scanning the battlefield with her enhanced senses. Then she saw it, a pattern within the chaos. The Devourer wasn't a singular entity, but a collective consciousness with a central nexus that existed primarily in the seventh-dimensional plane. "Captain Rains," she called urgently. "I've found its core structure." She transmitted the dimensional coordinates to the Ascendant. On the command ship, Mira and Indra analyzed the data. "She's right," Mira confirmed. "That's its central consciousness." "Can we reach it?" Rains asked. Casimir's expression was grim. "Not with the Ascendant. We'd need something smaller, more maneuverable." "Like a fighter," Vela said quietly. Silence fell over the comm channel. "It would be a one-way trip," Rains finally said. "Even with your enhancements, the dimensional pressure at that depth would be fatal." "But a targeted strike could destabilize its entire structure," Vela argued. "Create a cascade failure across all dimensional planes." Admiral Ellison's voice cut in. "Absolutely not, Commander. We're not sacrificing—" "With respect, Admiral," Vela interrupted. "We're losing this battle. Another hour, and there won't be anything left to save Earth." Before anyone could respond, the Devourer surged forward, engulfing 3 more capital ships. The screams across the comm channels were deafening. Vela made her decision. "I need a dimensional." "Charge!" she said, already programming the coordinates into her fighter's navigation system. One with enough power to collapse its central nexus. "Vela, wait," Rains began. "I've been fighting this thing in nightmares since it took my family," she replied calmly. "This is why I volunteered. This is why I changed." After a long pause, Rains gave the order. "Prepare a phase shift charge for Commander Tarek's fighter." As her ship docked briefly with the Ascendant to receive the weapon, Mira approached. "The dimensional shift will be excruciating," she warned. "Your consciousness will fragment across multiple planes." Vela nodded, accepting this. "Will it work?" "In theory," Mira said softly. "No one has ever penetrated that deep into the Devourer's structure before." The charge was loaded. Vela's fighter detached from the Ascendant. "All ships covering fire," Admiral Ellison ordered, her voice tight with emotion. "Give Commander Tarek everything we've got." Vela accelerated her fighter toward the heart of darkness, the combined firepower of the human fleet creating momentary breaches in the Devourer's defenses. "See you on the other side," she whispered, engaging the dimensional drive. Reality shattered around her. Pain unlike anything Vela had ever experienced consumed her as her fighter pierced through dimensional barriers. Her consciousness fragmented, scattered across multiple planes of existence. Through the agony, she maintained a singular focus, the central nexus of the Devourer. She could feel it now, ancient beyond comprehension. Not evil, she realized with sudden clarity, simply hungry. An entity born in the early universe when reality was still malleable, feeding on dimensional energy to survive. "You are different." The thought invaded her mind, alien and cold. The Devourer had become aware of her approach. "You are changed." "Yes," Vela gasped as her fighter penetrated deeper. Reality outside her viewport no longer resembled normal space. swirling patterns of energy and matter in configurations impossible in three-dimensional space surrounded her. Why do you resist the inevitable? It communicated. All will be consumed. Images flooded Vela's mind. Countless civilizations that had fallen before the Devourer. Some had fought. Some had fled. Some, like the Loxari, had hidden or evolved. But always, the Devourer had continued its inexorable consumption of worlds. Not this time, Vela whispered, activating the phase shift charge. Not humanity. Her fighter began to break apart as the dimensional pressures grew too intense for even the Loxari technology to withstand. Vela felt her own body dissolving, her enhanced consciousness spreading across the dimensional planes. In what might have been her final moments of coherent thought, a new presence touched her fragmenting mind. We are here, Vela Tarek. The collective consciousness of the Loxari observers surrounded her, their existence manifest across the dimensional boundaries. You have opened the path we could not. Understanding bloomed. The Loxari hadn't just been preparing humanity to fight the Devourer, they had been waiting for someone who could breach its innermost defenses, creating an opening for them to act as... Vela's physical form disintegrated completely, her consciousness merged with the Loxari collective. Together, they surged toward the Devourer's nexus. No. The ancient entity's panic reverberated across dimensions. This cannot be. The phase shift charge detonated, not in physical space but across the dimensional boundaries that define the Devourer's existence. The blast, amplified by the combined consciousness of Vela and the Loxari, tore through the entity's central nexus. Across the battlefield, the human fleet watched in awe as the Devourer began to collapse in upon itself. Impossible colors flared, as dimensional energy released in a cascading reaction. "What's happening?" Admiral Elyson demanded from the command ship. On the Ascendant's bridge, Rains, Mira, Casimir, and Indra stood transfixed, their enhanced senses perceiving the dimensional battle unfolding beyond ordinary vision. "She did it," Mira whispered. "She reached the nexus. Is she—" Admiral Ellison couldn't finish the question. "Gone," Rains confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "At least in any form we would recognize. The Devourer's death throes sent shockwaves across space-time." The human fleet retreated to safe distance, watching as the cosmic horror that had threatened the galaxy for eons finally began to dissipate. But in the dimensional spaces between physical reality, something remarkable was occurring. Vela's consciousness, fragmented but not destroyed, began to restructure itself with the help of the Loxari collective. "This is transcendence," the Loxari communicated. "What we achieved through millennia of evolution, you have accomplished through a single act of sacrifice." Vela's awareness expanded outward, no longer bound by physical form. She could perceive the entirety of the battlefield at once, the human fleet regrouping, the dying remnants of the Devourer fading from existence, the subtle dimensional rifts beginning to heal themselves, and she could reach out. On the bridge of the Ascendant, a shimmer of light coalesced into a translucent form that resembled Vela Tarek, but composed of pure energy rather than matter. Rains stepped forward in shock. "Vela?" The luminous entity smiled. "Not exactly. Not anymore. But enough of me remains." "How is this possible?" Indra asked, her fractal eyes widening. "The Loxari helped me restructure my consciousness as my physical form was destroyed," the entity explained. "I exist now primarily in the dimensional spaces they inhabit." Admiral Ellison approached cautiously. "Are you alive?" "I am transformed," the being that had once been Vela replied. "As is the Devourer." "It's destroyed," Casimir stated. "Not destroyed," the luminous entity corrected. "Contained, restructured, its energy redistributed across dimensional barriers where it can no longer consume. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing the cosmic entity now encapsulated within a dimensional prison, still existing but no longer a threat. The Devourer was the last of its kind, she explained. Born when the universe was young and dimensions more fluid, it consumed out of necessity, not malice. "What happens now?" Rains asked quietly. The entity smiled, a familiar expression on an increasingly unfamiliar form. Humanity proved itself worthy of joining the galactic community. The Loxari will make contact officially. There are other species, other civilizations existing across dimensional planes. You're ready to meet them now. "And you?" Admiral Ellison asked. "Will you return to us?" The luminous form flickered slightly. "I cannot return to what I was, but I can serve as a bridge between humanity and what lies beyond conventional reality." She turned to Rains and his transformed crew. "You were the first step, humans enhanced but still tied to physical form. I represent the next possibility, should others choose it." "Choice is what makes us human," Rains replied thoughtfully. "Even when we become something more." As word spread throughout the fleet of their victory, celebrations erupted across communication channels. The Devourer, the terror that had haunted the galaxy for eons, was finally neutralized. The entity that had been Commander Vela Tarek began to fade. "I must go for now. Existing in your dimensional plane requires considerable energy." "Will we see you again?" Mira asked. "I will return," the luminous being promised, "when humanity is ready for the next step of its evolution. The stars are not your limit. Reality itself awaits." As she vanished from conventional perception, her final words echoed across the Ascendant's bridge. 10 years ago, you fled to find a way to save humanity. Today, humanity found a way to save the galaxy. Tomorrow? Tomorrow belongs to those who dare to transcend. The Ascendant, humanity's once humble explorer vessel, now stood as a symbol of transformation, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it might become among the infinite dimensions of existence. And watching from beyond conventional reality, Vela Tarek smiled.